Today we're tearing down the RTX 5090, and this time I came prepared. So we just posted the review of this card, and we did that thermal engineering interview with Malcolm, the thermal engineer from NVIDIA. Now it is time to take apart the 5090, hopefully not with this. But the reason we have all the tools is because last time when we did the prototype card, which this was the PCB for, by the way, which is absolute insanity in the coolest possible way, it was a nightmare to take apart. And this was the cooler from it. We have a whole video on this thing. You should absolutely check it out because it's one of the craziest constructions we've ever worked on, but very difficult to take apart. Now, to be fair, not a retail product. This is. Hopefully the 5090 Founders Edition is a little easier. It has an equal amount of fingerprints and grease stains already. But the thing that concerns me about this, and we'll come in close to get this shot, I'm not seeing any screws on the back. And that is my natural enemy. Except for those. Before that, this video is brought to you by Height and the Y70 case. The Height Y70 case has a lot of polish and heavy attention to detail on the finer points. The case can fit radiators that are massive in depth to the side mount, has cooling in the floor of the case for direct intake to the GPU, and tries to find a balance between structural support of dust filters without obstructing too much intake. The Y70 is a follow-up to the popular Y60, which got Height to where it is today with its cut corner tempered glass cases. All right, so this is the 5090 Founders Edition card. We reviewed it for performance, gaming performance, power, efficiency, all that stuff, thermals as well in the full review. Now we're gonna take it apart. There's a few reasons I want to do that. One is to just see how it's assembled. So we did the thermal engineering interview with Malcolm Gutenberg, and he showed all the components, all the pieces of this, but he did not show me how to take it apart, and we did not disassemble it. I haven't gotten to see how this comes apart, so we're gonna figure this out together. And currently, we'll do a walk around of this card and just look at the general design. To avoid recapping the entire thermal engineering interview, you can go watch that. I'll give some highlights here. So this is a 2-fan design, and they're going for a dual flow through. So the prototype that I have over here, this was 3 fans, and it's full flow through. So the entire cooler pushes air straight through the cooler and out the other side. There's no PCB in there. The PCB goes on the bottom. So this is a big difference already. This is something they experimented with. They came down to a 2-slot design, and as we saw in the review, it's typically in the 70s. The highest we saw in a one-off was like 77 degrees for GPU core. Memory's a little warm. It's 90 degrees in our testing. We'd like to see that a little lower, but TJ Maxx is probably around 105 degrees. So anyway, the design here, they've got the PCB right in the middle. That means that it offsets the PCIe foot slightly to the side, and this connects via a connector to the PCB. So this is actually a separate board. And then the I/O is also separate because there's no PCB behind this fan. And so this is connected with a flex cable, which we'll get to see. And then for the 12-volt high power, this I think, if I remember correctly, is attached to the 12-volt 2x6 is attached to the PCB. We'll look at that. Couple interesting things. These slats are actually angled, and we saw in our Schlieren imaging testing that they work properly. So they're angled back towards me, and they push the air out at like, basically if it's oriented like this, the air is gonna shoot out of the card this way at about a 35-degree angle or so. And that's to get it away from the inlet so that there's not warm air collecting in front of these 2 fans and getting pulled back through the GPU. The bottom's similar. It is angled towards the camera, and that pushes it as much as is possible under the card, with the intent being, I think, to just try and get it away from the front of the fans, and maybe it gets trapped in there between the PCIe slots, but it seems like they're just trying to push it through and out towards what would be the top of the case in a standard mount like this in a chassis, where they're trying to get all the air going the same direction, which is up and out. Not necessarily because heat rises, but because that's where the exhaust fans are, although heat rising does help. A couple other things they did that we learned from that engineering discussion. So there's this really slight indent here that you might be able to see maybe level with the lens. And that indentation is intentional, and it's not just for look. So the intent behind it, as it was explained to us, is that basically because the performance of the fans is going to be best at the outside of their diameter, out here towards the farthest part of the blade. That's where the performance is going to be the best. NVIDIA went with the taller fin, and then they scoop it in towards the areas that are towards the center, towards the hub, to reduce pressure drop. So anyway, that's all in that discussion video. Let's start taking this thing apart. My Achilles heel with this so far, with all of these NVIDIA ones I couldn't figure out without some kind of unnecessary force, has been magnets. So I'm going to be on the lookout for those today. We still don't know how they work. And I guess we're going to start with the obvious, which is 4 Torx screws here. So let's do that first. Uh-oh. Oh. All right, so we got 4. This is a Torx 9 head. I just tried a 10 and it didn't, it was too big, so. So we're gonna track these on the mod mat. You can grab these on store.gamersnexus.net if you're interested in them. All right, plate comes off, nothing special to it. So that's what's under there. That's the I/O, which is, again, attached to its own PCB. We're gonna have to figure that out. It's a bunch of screws, probably start there. I don't know what happens after those screws come out. It's not really clear. They're attached to the plates for the, whatever, let's just take them out. That fits our Torx 6 driver. This driver is in our toolkit, also on the store. Cool. That accomplished nothing. Yeah. I probably need to screw it back in, honestly, until we get to this stage. All right. I just want to, for the record, say, because people are always concerned about it, it sounds a lot louder on the camera than it is in real life. It's fine. The cards are very heavy.
Everything I'm showing today are very heavy.
You saw that, right? Yeah. It's possessed. It's like some kind of a, oh my God. It's signaling something to me. Is it a hint? Is Malcolm building secrets to the puzzle onto the cards? It has to mean something. I don't know how they do this. Maybe. Okay. All right, so maybe this is easier than I thought. Can we just do this over here? This edge is kind of bumped up now. I see a screw under there. Okay, so this is the way. We haven't even caused any cosmetic damage yet, which is great. Cool. Wow. All right. I don't want to celebrate too soon, but that's pretty nice so far. So, first of all, I've not had to use a magnet, which means there's still a chance that this completely derails me and I can't figure it out. Secondly, nothing thus far has put me in a position where I think cosmetic damage would be easy, which is good. It seems like this would be relatively, now, especially now that we're documenting it. I remember we filmed this before. The card's not out yet, so now that it's going to be documented, it should be very easy to get this out without any cosmetic damage, so that's nice. Normally in the process of figuring out a new card, there's a couple scrapes along the way. I know what the screws do now. That screw we put back in. I bet. I'm sure the thermal guys are watching it. Like, I happen to put literally the only screw that goes into this frame is the one I put back in to hold that PCB in place. That's cool. Okay, so this is the X-frame design. All that means is, it's an X. This has come out. We've got LEDs here, so that just contacts straight to these pogo pins in there. Oh, there's pogo, yeah. So there's 2 pogo pins right in there. There's gold pins. Those contact with this X piece that lights up the LED. Wow, that was actually pretty easy. It takes a second to think about and figure it out, but I could see the lip down here where it's exposed for, it looks like that's where you would pry. It's just a lot of times prying results in damage, so I try not to do it. But anyway, that was pretty cool. Hopefully the rest of it is also easy. Maybe start with these. So these are torque 6 currently. It's probably going to change. Whoa, okay. Got some larger screws to track. So it looks like these plates are held in by these 2 screws. These plates are interesting. So originally I thought they were like cover plates. Thought they might be, as we've called them in the past, deco plates. But actually, air does flow into that area. There's a bunch of fins under there that we'll see in a second. So I think we have to do the same thing over here and get this X out of here. Oh. Never mind. Cool. Actually, can we just... Okay, cool. Nice. That was pretty easy. So now we just have the fully exposed back plate that has, should be some thermal pads on the back side here, contacting the, actually definitely are, I can see them, contacting the back side of the memory and the PCB. Let's get this thing out. Maybe that drops the PCIe slot. Ooh, nice. I'm going to keep those together. So that's the PCIe slot. This thing's kind of interesting because they have signal integrity challenges to deal with, and then also fragility. And so these pins, I think this is, if I remember correctly from that interview we did, I think it's custom done. And so it's all PCIe, but they have this connector feeding into that on the PCB, and then that's what makes the connection between the 2. Okay. That was just sitting on some pegs. Well, so far, we're doing okay so far. Whoa. Wow. I'm really not used to NVIDIA's video cards having things that are like so precision seated that the tiniest bit of gravity or pull knocks it loose. I mean, that's great. That solves a lot of the problems I've had over the years with these. Cool. So there's the back plate. Using all the surface area is nice to see. Actually, they have to actually connect it, which NVIDIA's done. A lot of partners, they'll do these back plates for basically looks, and then it ends up insulating because there's nothing to connect it to the board. I've seen plastic back plates in the past on $700 video cards. This is like a rubber border here. I think this is just to get a soft seal and prevent scratches. And then that's like just a pad, basically a bumper. Cool. Is there a secret? Nice. This is like one of the smoothest complicated teardowns I've done. There's been a lot of really smooth teardowns where it's like 4 screws, but this is a pretty complicated card, and we haven't had really even a risk of anything getting just visually damaged. So that goes to the I/O. This goes to fans, or fan, maybe that one. This goes to a fan. That is almost certainly an LED. Let's start pulling these. I forget how these, yeah, okay. Nice. Cool. Yeah, so these you pop the shield back and then can kind of get in from under here and pull it up. So now we just have these 4 screws, and then we get to the liquid metal, and that's going to be the fun part. And by fun, I mean it's going to be a lot of work to reassemble it with as good of a seal. So that's the leaf spring that holds everything secure. This is one of the thicker ones I've worked on. I'm not going to pretend to know anything about springs mechanically, but this is more rigid than a lot of the GPU backplate retention kits I pulled off. A lot of them, they're really pretty flimsy, so I'm sure there's a reason for that. It seems like it would have more force application or something. I think it just might peel up now. Yeah, cool. Just gotta be careful of the liquid metal drip, so I'll lift it straight up. Wow. That was far easier than I anticipated. Very cool. So one thing that's interesting here, we talked about this previously, but there's power components on both sides. So you can see all those caps, and they've really densely populated it. Up here we've got this liquid metal application. I'll reapply this, I guess, before we seal, but at the border there's this black gasket, and so it has 3 walls. Those are to help contain the liquid metal, but it's also supposed to help protect the liquid metal from aging and exposure, so exposure to air and things like that. And so it's got 3 walls in it. Malcolm had noted in the interview they found that 2 were sufficient, but they went for 3 because there's really no cost difference. And I mean, you can even see it here. We're kind of using at least one of those 2, one of those 3 walls is in use already because there's liquid metal on it. So very interesting to see. It looks good. I mean, the liquid metal doesn't look like it's really hardened or anything. So there's the other side. Liquid metal, it's really interesting for a lot of reasons, but it has a lot of interactions with other metals. It can plate them sort of, basically like dry or harden on it, and then creates a barrier. You lose some of the performance. It can pit them and corrode them, chew away at certain metals. So like just aluminum, you shouldn't use it with. There's a debate over whether raw copper is appropriate. Nickel plating tends to be fairly protected from liquid metal, from what I understand. I'm sure Roman has a lot of comments on his channel on Der Bauer, or probably will soon if you want to learn more about the specifics of it. But very high performance. You want on both surfaces, and you want as thin of a layer as possible. That's the big thing here. Just like ultra thin layer, and that's what they've got. This is machine applied. So let's try to take a look at this memory situation. Looks like we've got just exposed copper cold plate to the 3 vapor chamber. And then this is the vapor chamber style where he was saying this is a first in the world. I can't verify that, but it's coming out to the sides like this. And so they've got these, it looks like at least 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, might be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 it looks like, that extend out. And those have all those wicking structures that we see in the cut in half vapor chamber for this cooler in the other video. So it doesn't really look like there was bad contact anywhere. I mean, these pads are clearly contacting. This is fully seated and flush. That's fully seated. These down here on the cooler look good. You can see the ridges in them where they conform on pressure application and conform to the surface. So as for why the memory temperature was like 90 degrees or 88 degrees or whatever, I don't think it's an assembly issue here. I think it's just the cooler. Like we said in the video, it wasn't the worst. It was just warmer than we would have liked. This, I'm not sure if that just happened from removal. Sometimes they move around a little bit. You see it's bent over the edge there, or if that was during manufacturing, I'm not sure. All right, so I'm just bringing out some of the, this is our conductive thermal paste and toothbrush bin. So this is Conductonaut. We store this in its own bin, any liquid metals, because the little droplets that kind of are worked free when you're working with it, they can short and kill components if you're not controlling the sort of contaminated zone. So we store them all here. And so I'm hoping I have one of the Q-tips that Thermal Grizzly includes in these. We might have used them all. All right, cool, that's what we want. These are amazing for, like, as opposed to kind of a, I don't know, as opposed to something you buy in a drugstore. See all these fibers? These are what kind of cause problems, and you get this grosser application of liquid metal. I don't know what this, someone in the comments can tell me there's like a name for this type of Q-tip, but that tighter weave is what allows it to stay together and not distribute a bunch of, what, I don't know if that's cotton or what, but fibers across it. So let's do this. I'll do a quick demo. It's been a while since we've done stuff with liquid metal. So for people who don't know, liquid metal, whenever it's applied, you don't want a river, like an actually kind of fluid application. When it's applied, it should spread just really cleanly. In this case, right now, we're picking it up. So I'm getting some spread here as an example. So this area, you can see I'm just kind of distributing the liquid metal here. And you want to go for like as even a surface as possible, because you really don't want to be in a situation where you're taking this apart. I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. We've worked with liquid metal a lot. It's just if you're inexperienced with it, you're less likely to have some on hand. It can be frustrating to spread if you haven't done it before. And I don't know how well the camera picks it up, but that corner I've got down there, it's kind of what you want, where it's like just a thin layer. You can see it's liquidy, as opposed to these other areas where you can see that the liquid metal from the surface tension on the other side was kind of pulled off and it's on the other side of the cooler. So what you would do is redistribute this completely across the surface of the die and then do it again on the cooler side and then remate it. But what we want to do right now is actually pick it up. So we'll do this as a real-time demo. I need this card to go back into testing today, and I need to validate the thermals and everything after we do this. So liquid metal, for exposed die like this, it's extremely important that every exposed area gets liquid metal treatment. If you have an area where it's just the silicon dry and there's no liquid metal, especially on silicon exposed like this as opposed to something with an IHS, then the chance of killing it just from like a really bad hot spot, I mean, you probably won't kill it. There's a lot of protections, but there is a chance, and so even spread is what matters. So that's what we're going to do. So this is kind of what you end up with, where you'll pick some up on the Q-tip you use, but they have a whole pool of it in the outer ring here if I need more. And again, you really want to avoid this if possible. Repasting is one thing. This is, liquid metal applications can be really fidgety, and if it's factory applied, I personally would prefer to try and leave it. And this stuff doesn't squish around like thermal paste does the same way. So if you see a spot where there's just nothing, you really have to go back over it and add. Then we're going to do this side. So I'm just going to color within the lines here. It's pretty nice. Okay. Okay, not bad. I'm going to stop there for a moment. So this, when you end up with something like this, it's okay if you see liquid metal on the end of it. There was a good amount extra in there that was spilled over the wall, that first barrier. So I just kind of pulled from there to replace whatever came up. So that's normal. If too much comes off, you can't get an even spread. If you're in this situation where you have to reapply liquid metal, then the thing to do would be to buy some. There's a lot of different brands. The only one I've worked with is Conductonaut. That doesn't mean it's the best one or anything. It's just the only one I've used. And then for these, I mean, you can see that we just got that streak from this. So these keep them away from things electronics are going to be on exposed, because liquid metal is conductive, and you wouldn't want to get a bunch of tiny liquid metal exposure onto a surface you're building a computer on. So I need to figure out what's next. I think this card's going back into testing for MFG and DLSS and stuff, and then I'll probably do some testing with thermal paste just to do an A/B out of curiosity. So this one's a little different because we already got to see all of the individual parts and the PCB and go over them in depth in that engineering discussion video. So what we're going to do is stop here. We're going to use the extra airtime we have, because that discussion's already been done, to show more of the full teardown process for this. And hopefully it serves as a little bit of a guide for you all. It wasn't filmed as a tutorial because I went into this blind, so there's probably better technique, but we were able to get it apart without any issues. No damage to anything, nothing breaking or confusing really, other than that first step. So I'm overall very impressed with the assembly of this. It's a decent amount of screws here. I mean, it's not insignificant, but they were at least all logically placed. Unfortunately, they are different sizes and lengths, so tracking them is very important because you don't want to end up with the wrong screw in the wrong area. But this, I think the biggest challenge people are going to run into is the liquid metal, for anyone who's never worked with it before. So it's the same exact thing as if you've ever delidded a CPU. You're going to have no problems with this if you want to open the card up and reapply liquid metal a few years down the line or something. In theory, this gasket approach they're doing should make it so that it's not really losing a ton of performance and aging, but we can't know. It's day one. So it'll take a while to find out. That's the only real reason I would open it, though, is if it just starts to perform poorly, and maybe it's because the liquid metal has aged. Otherwise, it'd be for something like replacing fans, but you could do that without, I think, going all the way down here. It'd be kind of hard to route the cables. Assembly is very good. The PCB is super dense, and we talked with that in that discussion video. Apparently, ours is 193 in the binning lottery, for whatever that's worth. And yeah, I mean, I'm impressed with how they put it together. This is a massive improvement. The 20 series sucked. They were awful the way those were built, and the coolers were not very good. The 30 series was a huge improvement, but it did perplex me a little bit because there were 4, I think, magnets involved. And the way we got rid of those was a drill. And then the 40 series was much easier. And then this is the easiest so far, and yet it is a far more complicated set of PCBs. So pretty cool. It's weird. I've been reviewing NVIDIA's reference cards long enough that the conclusion we would always have in those reviews when the card was good, like when the GPU itself was good, it was always the case, like 700 series, 900, and 10 series, and then the 20 series. Every single time the conclusion was, this GPU is good, don't buy the reference one, buy a partner model. And now, NVIDIA's is actually competitive in a way that should scare partners if they don't figure out their own thermal engineering for it. And I think they're going to really struggle because NVIDIA gets its GPUs at a discount as compared to them. But yeah, the build quality is good. The assembly process seems good for how complicated the actual assortment of parts is, the different PCBs. And overall, it's well built. So, and you got a quick tutorial on liquid metal, but you can watch a CPU delidding video from anyone if you wanted more details on how to do that. Same process. That's going to be it. Thanks for watching. I'm going to reassemble this. We can get to MFG testing, validate that the thermals haven't drifted or anything, and subscribe for more. Check back. We have a ton more of this stuff coming up. It's been fun working on the 50 series. The reviews on the channel. We'll see you all next time.